Have you ever heard someone say that love isn't something you chase? It's something that simply finds you? Most people hear that and shrug. It sounds poetic, maybe comforting, maybe naive. A sentence written on a postcard or printed on a mug. Nice to read, impossible to believe. Until it happens to them. Until life becomes quiet enough that they begin to hear their own heart whisper. There must be more than this. For Anna Kowalska, a woman from Warsaw, Poland, love had never been soft. It had been calculated, expected, transactional, controlled, measured, and earned piece by piece. She spent years believing that affection had a price, that vulnerability was a weakness, that needing someone meant losing power. But somewhere along the way, life stopped feeling full and began feeling heavy. She was 58 when she finally admitted something she had buried beneath routine, pride, and responsibility. She was tired. Not tired in the way sleep could fix, but tired in the way the soul gets tired when it has carried unmet longing for too long. She was tired of relationships that felt like negotiations, where every feeling needed justification and every emotion was questioned. She was tired of being strong because no one stayed long enough for her to be soft. She was tired of mistaking proximity for connection, confusing companionship with convenience, presence with intimacy, a shared roof with a shared heart. She wasn't lonely because she was alone. She was lonely because she had spent years next to people who never truly saw her. And one quiet morning, as she sat with her coffee growing cold and the world rushing outside her window, she felt a realization settle inside her like a slow exhale. I don't want to live a life that feels survived instead of lived. So she packed a suitcase, carefully, slowly. Not because she was running away. Running requires urgency. She had none left. She packed because staying felt like disappearing. Because silence had filled the spaces where laughter used to live. Because she didn't know what else to do with a heart that had stopped expecting anything. Her destination? The Philippines. A place she knew only from magazine spreads and travel documentaries that called it warm, loud, and full of soul. She didn't come for adventure. She didn't come for reinvention. She didn't come searching for love. She had stopped believing love was something she could find. No. Anna came for something much quieter, much more fragile. She came searching for peace. Peace in a world that felt too loud. Peace from a lifetime of emotional armor. Peace from the exhaustion of being someone everyone leaned on, but no one truly held. On the plane, somewhere above the clouds, she whispered a sentence to herself, a truth she had never dared say aloud. Maybe I'm not too old to feel alive again. Little did she know, the country waiting for her was not just a destination. It was the beginning of everything her heart had stopped hoping for. Her first days were quiet, almost unnervingly quiet. Time moved differently there. Not in hours and schedules, but in tides and sunlight. She stayed near the coastline in a small town known more for fishing than tourism. A place where people lived slowly, where mornings belonged to the ocean and evenings belonged to conversation. Her apartment overlooked the water, and at dawn, the world didn't wake with noise, but with gentle sound. The distant hum of a boat engine, the quiet rhythm of waves brushing the shore, the soft laughter of locals greeting each other as if every morning was a blessing, not a routine. Every morning, the sea breeze drifted through her open window, carrying the scent of salt, coconut oil, and life lived outdoors. And for the first time in decades, Anna woke without alarms, without urgency, without pressure, without the familiar weight of expectation. She didn't realize until then how much of her life had been built around rushing. Rushing to meet deadlines, to meet expectations, to meet the version of herself others demanded. Now, the world wasn't asking anything from her. It simply existed, calmly, gently, and allowed her to exist with it. One afternoon, she sat outside a small coffee shop overlooking the water. The sign above the door looked hand-painted, and the tables were mismatched. Wooden chairs, plastic stools, whatever the owner could find or repair. She liked that. There was honesty in imperfection. As she studied the menu, she felt her anxiety rise. The words were unfamiliar, the pronunciation uncertain. She traced one dish name with her finger, trying to imagine what it might taste like. Then a voice beside her spoke. Warm, soft, unhurried. First time here? She turned. A man sat at the next table, calm and relaxed, as if he belonged to the rhythm of the sea itself. His name was Miguel Navarro, a former overseas engineer who had worked in Dubai, Singapore, and Qatar, places where life moved fast and success was measured in numbers, not meaning. But when his mother died, something shifted. He returned home, trading a career that impressed others for a life that finally felt aligned with his heart. He spoke softly, with pauses that felt intentional. Like he didn't rush thoughts, didn't rush feelings, didn't rush life. It was strange, almost disarming. He helped her order coffee and cassava cake, translating the menu with patience instead of impatience. There were no sparks, no slow-motion moment, no swelling movie soundtrack. Just two strangers sharing a quiet conversation beneath the late afternoon sun, sipping coffee as the ocean breathed behind them. And yet, something about him stayed with her, not like a memory, but like a question she hadn't asked in years. Could connection be simple? As she walked back to her apartment that evening, she noticed something inside her. A softness, a calmness, almost like a door she had long kept closed had opened a fraction. Not enough for a new story, but enough for a possibility. Weeks passed, and Miguel remained a quiet but steady presence in Anna's new life. Not daily, not intrusive. Just enough to remind her that connection didn't have to be pressured to be real. One early evening, just as the sky was folding into soft gold, he invited her to a small gathering at a seaside community center. He explained it casually, as if it were nothing more than neighbors sharing food and conversation. But to Anna, it felt like an invitation into a world she wasn't sure she belonged to. Still, something inside her, curiosity, or maybe longing, made her say yes. When she arrived, she expected what she knew from Europe. Stiff introductions, polite but distant nods, maybe a few forced questions. But instead, something entirely different unfolded. As soon as she stepped inside, a man she had never seen before smiled warmly. Not a formal smile, not a polite mask, but the kind people give when they're genuinely happy someone came. Without hesitation, he poured tea into a cup and gently slid it toward her, ensuring her glass was full before filling his own. Anna blinked, surprised. She wasn't used to being prioritized. She sat down, still unsure where she fit in the room, when a woman approached her. Kind eyes, weathered hands, a presence that felt maternal without needing to speak. Without asking, the woman draped a soft shawl around Anna's shoulders. The evening breeze had turned cool, but before Anna could comment on the temperature, someone had already noticed, already cared, already acted. She placed her hand over the shawl and whispered, "Thank you." The woman shook her head softly, as if the gratitude was unnecessary, and replied, "Hospitality is love." Not a phrase rehearsed, not a motto. A truth, a way of living. For the rest of the evening, Anna watched the room. Not through the eyes of someone comparing cultures, but through the eyes of someone remembering something she didn't know she'd forgotten. People shared food before they served themselves. They laughed, not loudly, but warmly, like laughter was an extension of breathing. No one rushed conversation. No one looked at their watch. No one seemed interested in status, titles, or what she had accomplished. They were interested in her presence, not her resume. And that realization tenderized something deep inside her. That night, she walked home slower than usual, letting the ocean breeze settle her thoughts. When she finally reached her small apartment, she lit a candle, sat by the window, and opened her journal. Something she hadn't done in years. The words came easily, as if they had been waiting. Here, kindness is not a gesture, it is instinct. She paused, then wrote another line beneath it. Back home, kindness was appreciated. Here, kindness is expected, because it is how people choose to exist. She closed the journal and placed her hand over it, feeling her heartbeat steady. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she knew this. She was changing. Not quickly, not dramatically, but quietly. The way sunrise replaces night, not with noise, but with light. Weeks passed, and Miguel remained part of her days in a quiet, almost effortless way. Not through grand invitations or dramatic gestures, just small, gentle presences. A wave from across the street, a warm greeting at the market, a shared laugh over mispronounced words. Slowly, the unfamiliar began to feel familiar. Then one late afternoon, when the ocean reflected the orange of the sinking sun, Miguel invited her to a small gathering at a seaside community center. "It's nothing formal," he said with a soft shrug. "Just neighbors sharing food." Still, Anna felt her stomach tighten with nerves. Not because she feared the people, but because she feared being out of place. In her past life, gatherings meant formalities, dress codes, social tactics, polite smiles that never reached the eyes. She prepared herself for that version of social interaction. Restrained, careful, distant. But when she arrived, reality unfolded differently. The moment she stepped inside, soft music played in the background, guitars, voices, laughter, not loud, not chaotic, alive. An older man she had never met looked up, smiled like he'd been expecting her, and without hesitation poured tea, not for himself but for her, gently pushing the cup toward her as if it was the most natural gesture in the world. No introduction, no explanation, no hesitation. Just kindness. Almost immediately after, a woman approached. Not with the formal stiffness Anna was used to, but with the warm confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime embracing others. Without a word, she placed a light shawl around Anna's shoulders, noticing the evening breeze before Anna did. The gesture was so natural, so intentional, that it stunned her. When Anna finally found her voice, she whispered, "Thank you. Really. Thank you." The woman smiled. Not politely, not out of obligation, but with a tenderness that felt ancient. She replied softly, "Hospitality is love." 3 words, but they held the weight of a philosophy, a culture, a way of being. Not just practiced, lived. As the evening unfolded, Anna found herself observing more than speaking. She watched how people cared for one another without being asked, how they refilled each other's plates without permission, how they laughed fully, not carefully, how conversations weren't rushed or forced, but flowed with sincerity and curiosity. No one asked her what she did for a living. No one asked her about her income, status, or past. No one tried to measure her worth. They simply made space for her presence. And space, she realized, was the rarest gift she had ever been given. That night, when she returned to her apartment, she lit the small lamp beside her bed, opened her journal, and let her pen move across the page. The words came not from thinking, but from feeling. Here, kindness is not a gesture. It is instinct. She paused, then added, "It is not performed. It is lived. It is not reserved for special occasions. It is woven into the ordinary." She closed the journal gently, pressing her palm over the cover as if sealing the truth inside her chest. For the first time in years, she felt something awakening. Not excitement, not hope. Something much quieter, much steadier. Belonging. And she couldn't help but wonder. Maybe kindness isn't rare. Maybe some places simply forgot how to practice it. The turning point came quietly. Not through romance, but through compassion. One stormy evening, rain hammered against the roof like drums. Wind shook the windows. The power went out. She wasn't afraid. Just alone. Then she heard a soft knock. She opened the door. Miguel stood there, soaked from the rain, holding a lantern, warm food, and extra blankets. "You don't have to be alone through the storm," he said simply. No grand speeches, no pressure, no expectation, just presence. He didn't try to fix her loneliness. He sat with her through it. And in that silence, she felt something she had forgotten existed. Safety. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. She began noticing patterns. A man helping an elderly stranger carry bags, without waiting for thanks. Someone giving up their seat without hesitation. People praying softly before meals, not publicly, not loudly, but sincerely. Love here wasn't shown to be admired. It was lived, quietly. One evening, as the sun melted into the sea and the world softened into gold, Anna and Miguel sat quietly on a weathered bench overlooking the shoreline. The sky glowed with colors she had no name for. Amber fading into lilac, orange dissolving into soft blue. The waves reflected the light like glass, moving with a rhythm that felt ancient and patient, as if the ocean itself remembered every story told along its shores. They didn't speak at first. They didn't need to. Silence with Miguel never felt empty. It felt like breathing. She watched fishermen pull in the last nets of the day, their movements slow and practiced. She watched couples walking barefoot along the sand, hands intertwined not with urgency, but with ease. She watched strangers smile at strangers without hesitation or caution. There was a softness here, not weakness, but something else. Something she couldn't name. Finally, the question slipped from her lips. Not rehearsed, not planned, just honest. Why are people here so gentle? Even when life is not easy. She asked it almost apologetically, as if softness was a rare language only spoken where hearts had not yet been broken. Miguel didn't answer right away. He took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the horizon as if searching for the right words in the space between waves. When he finally spoke, his voice carried both warmth and truth. Because life is already hard. He turned to her then, not dramatically, but with sincerity. So why add more hardness to it? The simplicity of his answer struck her deeper than any poetic line or philosophical explanation ever had. He continued, slowly, thoughtfully, choosing his words like someone choosing gifts, not statements. We are taught that strength is not how loud you can speak. He paused, letting the wind finish the sentence for him. Then softly he added, but how kind you can remain. Anna felt her throat tighten, not with sadness, but with recognition. In her world, strength had been about endurance, control, resilience built from silence and survival. Strength meant not breaking, not bending, not showing the cracks. But here, strength seemed different. Strength was gentleness in a harsh world, compassion when no one asked for it, softness without fear of being misunderstood. As the last sliver of sun disappeared into the sea, Miguel rested his hands on his knees and said quietly, almost like a confession, anyone can be loud, anyone can be proud, but kindness takes courage. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words settle. She hadn't realized how much she hungered for a love rooted not in dominance or fear, but in compassion. As the evening breeze wrapped around them, she whispered, more to herself than to him. Maybe the world forgot that. Miguel smiled, not with triumph, but with tenderness. Maybe, he replied, or maybe it just needs reminding. And sitting there, with the sea breathing in front of them, and the sky fading into twilight, Anna realized something she had never understood before. She hadn't come to the Philippines to escape life. She had come to rediscover the softness she once believed she had to abandon to survive. And for the first time in years, maybe decades, her heart felt safe enough to soften. By the time she realized she loved him, it wasn't because of passion, excitement, or intensity. There was no dramatic confession, no moment of breathless adrenaline, no cinematic kiss under a storm-filled sky. It wasn't sudden. It unfolded quietly, the way dawn replaces darkness, not with noise, but with light. She realized she loved him the moment she noticed she no longer felt the need to protect herself from being misunderstood. It was because for the first time in her life, she didn't have to earn affection. She didn't have to perform strength. She didn't have to hide softness. She didn't have to brace herself for disappointment. She didn't have to prove her worth. She didn't have to fear disappearing the moment she stopped being useful. Miguel didn't love with fireworks. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't chase grand gestures or dramatic declarations. He loved with consistency. In the way he remembered her coffee without asking. In the way he walked beside her, not ahead or behind. In the way he listened, fully, as if her words deserved time, not efficiency. He loved with patience, never rushing her healing, never asking why her walls existed, never demanding she move faster than her heart could. He loved with dignity. Not the dignity of pride, but the dignity of someone who knew love was sacred, not transactional. He didn't love to own. He loved to honor. And that, she realized, was rarer than romance. Because romance can be loud. Romance can be temporary. Romance can burn hot and fade without warning. But what Miguel offered was different. His love wasn't a flame. It was a steady lantern, one that stayed lit even when storms came. A kind of love that didn't ask, "Are you worth my effort?" but instead whispered, "I'm here. Not because I must, but because I choose to be." And as she sat beside him one evening, watching the gentle sway of the ocean, she understood something she had spent her whole life missing. Love was never meant to be a battlefield. It was meant to be a refuge, a place where the heart could rest without fear, a place where two souls could simply exist, without pretense, without performance, without fear of loss. For the first time in her life, love wasn't a storm. It was peace. And peace, she finally understood, was the most extraordinary form of love there is. When her return ticket date arrived, Miguel didn't ask her to stay. He simply said, "Whatever brings you peace, choose that." And that sentence did what begging never could. It made her realize, love isn't possession. Love is freedom. So she stayed, not because she was running from something, but because she finally found a place and a person where love didn't hurt. Years later, when she was interviewed about her decision, the reporter asked, "Did you fall in love with a Filipino man?" She smiled softly and replied, "No, I fell in love with a culture that believes love is a responsibility, not a performance." And maybe, just maybe, that's what the world is missing. Not bigger love, not louder love, but gentler love. Love that doesn't shout to be seen. Love that shows up even in the rain. Love that stays. So if you've ever wondered whether real love still exists, maybe the answer isn't in another dating app, another heartbreak, or another chase. Maybe it's here, in a nation that loves quietly. In men who learned from generations before them that love isn't something you say, it's something you do. If this story touched you, share it, because someone out there needs to be reminded. Love still exists. And sometimes, it speaks with a Filipino heart.